So this is a first world problem if I've ever seen one. This is, like, I can't imagine complaining about this. This is from The Guardian. Adios Alexa, why must our robot assistants be female? Microsoft's Cortana, Google Home, and other AI devices tend to be voiced by women, playing into the stereotype that serving is a woman's job. But do robots need to be gendered at all? Now, again, like, you have to really have your priorities misplaced if you're really concerned about the fact that, like, Google Home is a female, and this is apparently playing into stereotypes that serving is a feminine job. Like, of all the things to complain about, this just astounds me. But then again, of all the things to complain about, I am complaining about this guy complaining about things. So can I really talk? But this isn't even by like a radfem too. This is by a male feminist. Microsoft has Cortana, Amazon has Alexa, and Google has, well, Google Assistant. That last name doesn't give it away, but get it talking, and the common link between all three AI assistants is revealed. They're all supposed to be women, and now it's not that they're necessarily supposed to be women. I imagine there was a marketing team that really got together and said, okay, what is the best possible voice that would appeal to everyone? Like, what is obviously the voice is going to influence who buys it, who buys our product, and we're going to pick a default voice. Now, I mean, I don't know if it's like the GPS where you can change the voice. I imagine you can, because at least on the GPS that I had like 10 years ago, there were like 20 different voices. I think there were like 6 different English voices. There was like 2 females and a male. I believe you could choose that. But I mean, why is it default? I don't know. Like, it's just a good voice. Like, the voices are the best sounding voice to the average person, as I assume what the case is. Like, I don't think they just picked one at random. I don't think they looked and they're like, well, this assistant is going to serve you. It's going to do what you say. Therefore, it must be a woman. I don't think they thought that. I think they just picked the voice that they thought would appeal to most people, and that's what they did. And that's pretty much it. Like, hooray for female representation in AI devices. How often, that's just the thing too. Like, before we had these kind of devices, there were artificial intelligences in movies and TV shows and that, and pretty much all the time, besides Jarvis, all of them that I can think off the top of my head are women, or at least have female voices, because again, it's a robot. It's a robot. It's just a voice. Providing assistance has long been considered a woman's role. I mean, again, like, is considered a woman's role? Well, I mean, when I think of a butler, I think of a male, but when I think of a secretary, I think of a female. But I mean, it's more just this. That's how it's been. That doesn't mean I think anyone with a basic IQ level can look and say, okay, well, this role is typically fulfilled by a woman. That doesn't mean it has to be a woman. That doesn't mean women can only do that role. It's like anyone with, I think, just basic intelligence can look and say, oh, that's just how it is, but it can change. We're not constricted to this scenario. It can be different, believe it or not. The robots that men voice, meanwhile, tend to be in positions of power, often dangerously so. Think HAL 9000 or the Terminator. When a robot needs to be scary, it sounds like a man. Well, not necessarily, because again, there have been many like villain AIs. I'm just thinking of, wasn't it iRobot had an AI that had a female voice, and that was the main antagonist? I think so. I can't remember, but generally, like, it seems to be that the if you want to make something evil and powerful, we're not talking powerful as in like political power or we're talking about like just like just power in the sense of I don't know, brute force, strength. Genuinely, you think men? Just because because I assume it's just because the men are on average the generals, the warlike people. And when I'm thinking about this, all I'm thinking is okay. So what you're saying here is that women are overrepresented in AIs and in literally artificial intelligences. Like the smartest beings we have developed are robots because they can just look to the internet for everything, and they're female. And we're looking at the evil like Terminator beings and those kind of robots. The ones that make you think evil and bad are voiced by men. If it was why? I'm just so confused here, because again, like, imagine saying like, oh, the evil roles are voiced by men and the intelligent ones are voiced by women, and then complaining. I'm just thinking, if it was switched around, you'd be complaining as well. Like, There's no pleasing. There's no pleasing it at all. I'm just thinking, like, yeah, it's isn't. If I were a male feminist, if I were a progressive, wouldn't it be great that the device in everyone's home was voiced by a woman? Isn't that female representation? But apparently not. And wouldn't it be bad if all of our, like, a lot of the evil villains out there, the evil robot villains, were voiced by women? Would that be awful and needs to be changed? Like that's what I thought the logic would indicate, but apparently it's the opposite. Patriarchy tells us that women serve while men order. Yes, patriarchy is something that does no longer exist in pretty much the U.S. or in any first world country. For the most part, that's pretty much gone. There are no doubt people that think that, but they tend to be ousted from positions of power rather quickly. While women serve while men order, and technology firms seem content to play into stereotypes. Again, like, are they consciously thinking that? I doubt it. I think they were just like, what voice will be most popular and make us the most money, and they picked that. Like, again, I don't see a problem with this. Rather than risk the potentially jarring results of challenging them. Again, imagine if they made them all men. Then we would see an article on The Guardian saying, where's all the women representation in artificial intelligence? That's what we would say. So apparently if it's overrepresented, that's bad, and if it's underrepresented, that's bad. And I'm sure if it was equally represented, that would be that thing wouldn't maintain very well, because no doubt people would choose. I think it was one of the Assassin's Creed games. You had the option. They gave you an option to choose a female player or a male player. Like, there were two different characters, and I think it was something like people chose the male character more often, and I think it was because the people playing that game were predominantly male. And then there was an article complaining about it, and it's like there's just no way to fix this. There's no way to fix this without someone complaining. So shut up, honestly. And yes, I'm fully aware that I'm complaining about someone complaining about the dumbest thing ever. So again, where does that put me? Apple's Siri speaks with a male voice in some territories, including the UK, and a female voice in others. But as the feminist academic Helen Hester has shown, when early assistants such as Apple's 1987 Knowledge Navigator were given male personas, they tended to be seen as a research assistant, an academic librarian, and an information manager, rather than just a personal secretary. I mean, maybe it's because those roles are predominantly male. Like, I am fully aware that there is legitimately a stereotype where when people think of doctor, they think male, and when people think of nurse, they think female. And now, like, that is a stereotype, and it's something that honestly, like, I that is something I have actually experienced before, in the sense that I was like a nurse's aide, which is below a nurse, and people have thought I was the doctor when I walked in the room, and that I was above the other female nurses. That is something that has happened to me before, so I can specifically say, like, yeah, that has happened. Like, that does happen sometimes. But honestly, when it comes to these positions, it's like, why is the stereotype there? Because that's the predominant job. Like, it's something where if you were to just place a man and a woman next to each other, and you were told that one of them is a doctor and one of them is a nurse, you had to pick one. Like, you had to bet your money on it. You weren't allowed to not bet. You had to bet your money on it. I would bet the male was the doctor and the female was the nurse. Why? Because that's probably most likely to be true. Now, again, is that a bad thing? It just is. And it's something that can be changed. Like, everyone has, like, men have full access to become nurses. Women have every access to become doctors like that. It's something they can do. And I know many male nurses and female doctors, and they're all great people. Like, I know loads of them. So it's something where the stereotype exists, but is it really harmful? Is it blocking anyone from achieving any position? Is it damaging? I would disagree. Like, it just is. That's what happens when you think of construction worker. You think man. When you can do that with any job. When any job is predominantly one gender, you stereotype it into that position. Now, research assistant, to be honest, might be predominantly female, predominantly male. I don't know, to be honest. Like, I don't know if I really have a stereotype there. Librarian, I actually think female because library. But again, personal secretary, it's like, yeah, they're predominantly female. Like, that's just the way it is. Women are attracted to those jobs, men less so. And that's just, like, I fail to see why this is such a big deal we have to make something out of. It's like, feminist academic Helen Hester. Again, this woman became an academic. So, Could she have become an academic librarian? Is she an academic librarian? Is she fighting the stereotype? Is she a research assistant? I don't know. My thing is, if you want to fight the stereotype, then go into that position. Change the stereotype instead of just complaining. Like, if that's what people think, then okay, then they're just serving the market. Well, I am failing to see why this is such a major issue. Of all the issues in the world, why is this a major issue? Just switching in a man's voice then might not be enough to throw out the association of administrative work with women. Maybe the question is, when an Amazon Echo has no more sense of gender identity than a lawnmower, why are we gendering robots at all? Well, because we are giving robots, because it's an AI. Like we give AI a personality because we see it as intelligent. We see it as a human being, in a sense. Like, I mean, we know obviously that it's a robot, but that's where that direction is going. Like a lawnmower, we know it's just a stupid machine. It doesn't have to say anything to us. It's just a dumb machine. You pull the cord, you move. That's it. That's pretty much it. It spins a blade. That's all there is to it. But when we're talking about things that talk to us and act a bit more human, something that we can literally ask a question to and it will give us a response. Like, it's not very human. A lawnmower is not very human because it doesn't. It's nowhere even remotely close to being human. You push it. You can push anything. Like, that is not a very human quality. Getting an answer when you ask a question, that is something that is uniquely human. Getting an answer in a human language, that is something that is uniquely human, and therefore, when we develop a robot that can do that, like Amazon Echo, that you can ask a question and get an answer, that is a human quality, and that's why we're giving them human characteristics. And when you give something a human characteristic, no doubt, you give it a gender identity, as every single human being has a gender identity. So therefore, like, you have to pick one. That's just what happens. So apparently there's something called Equal AI, an initiative dedicated to correcting gender bias in AI. Again, we are at that point where we are at that point where we are so successful and forward as a country, where there are so few problems in America and the first world, and in these countries, we are at such a point that we are dedicating time and energy and effort to correcting gender bias in our robots. You never thought we'd hit this point, did you? Has created what it says is the first genderless voice, which it calls Q, by blending the voices of 5 non-binary speakers and pitch shifting that recording to 153 hertz, a frequency midway between the tones commonly perceived as male and female, and testing the results on an audience of thousands before refining further. They have created a ready-to-use library with which to voice not just digital assistants, but metro stations, games, and more. Q will be made available on 11 March. But whether technology firms will think to resist the easy association of femininity with subservience, again, like, do I actively think? Do I, like, when I talk to I don't have an Amazon Alexa, but when I talk to one, if I were to talk to an Alexa like I have before with other people's, I don't immediately, like, remind myself, oh yeah, she's a woman, right? She's subservient to me. Like, that's not a thought that goes through my head. That's not something I ever concern myself with, and it kind of worries me that, do these people think I think that? Do these people think most people think that? I don't think they do. I don't think the gender identity of a voice of a robot is that big of an issue. And again, like, if it's an issue to some people, okay, sure. But the reason I'm so worried about this article is you know what's going to happen, right? Like, they're going to put this out here. They're going to put out this robot voice, and they're going to start mandating it on metro stations, and video games will start introducing it, I suppose. And you know what's going to happen? I'm going to bet, now I could be wrong, now it could be that this voice is the most appealing voice, everyone likes the voice, it's a better voice, and people start rapidly adopting it. In that sense, the market prevails, hooray. But more likely what's going to happen is people are going to hear a man's voice, a female's voice, or a man's voice, a woman's voice, and then they're going to hear this weird in-the-middle voice. And it's weird. It's different. It's less... It's unusual. It's not something you're very used to and very quaint. It feels less human, mostly. I would imagine it would feel less human because it's unfamiliar. It's a bit too robotic. And I imagine what they would probably do is, if given the choice between these 3 options, if they were given the option to choose, which no doubt, I mean, that's something that's probably existing now, but I just don't know about. Like, if it doesn't exist now, it will very soon. The ability to choose the voice of your robots, of the AIs, and that we sell, like Amazon Alexa, Google Home, that kind of thing. I imagine you can change the voices. And they're going to give you the three options. They're going to give you man, woman, and this thing in Q. And the vast majority of people will probably pick the woman's voice because there are I can't think of the study. I don't want to quote the study here because, again, I can't remember what it is. I'm not going to spend half an hour to look it up and find out what it is. I know I've read this years ago. Something how generally, like, the female voice is just more pleasing to everyone. Like, it sounds better. Both to men and to women, they like the female voice. It's a very comforting voice. The average female voice is much more comforting and just enjoyable to listen to than the average man's voice. That's just, I've read that. If I can find it, I'll put it in the description. But I know I've read that before. And I also know that I'm not citing my source if I don't find the article, so you can throw that out. You can feel free to ignore that. But I guarantee you what will happen is if you give people the choice to choose between these three, barely anyone will pick Q. Why? Because they don't care. Because the voice just doesn't sound as good. Again, I haven't heard the voice, so I could be wrong. But that is my prediction ahead of time. And then people are going to start complaining, like, oh, why aren't people picking the non-binary one? Why aren't people picking this one? Maybe it's because they hate women that they're picking the women's voice, their woman's voice. Maybe it's because they're oppressing. They love to oppress women, so they pick a woman's voice to be their robot servant. I know we're going to find those articles out there because we saw the same thing. We see the same thing when we give people choice and people pick different things. Like, we see Lego keeps getting in trouble. Like, not like majorly, but I see people complaining about Lego all the time because it's like, why do we have gendered toys? Why do we have male toys and female toys with Lego? Why are they pushing this divisive thing? Why do they just pick the stereotype of what women like and push that for women and pick the stereotype of what men like and push those toys for men? Why don't they do non-gendered toys? And it's like, they did in the past. The reason they do it is because that's what works. That's what makes them money. If you waste your time marketing toys that appeal to boys more, to women, you're wasting money. It's just not going to bring back the return. And it's going to be this same kind of thing. Like, you give people a choice, people will make their choice, and then they're going to complain because people made the wrong choice. But yeah, that's pretty much this article here. When I read it, as soon as I read it, I was like, I got to do a video on this because imagine complaining about this. And again, imagine complaining about this, someone complaining about this. But it's just because I know what's going to happen. I know there's no way to please these people. Like, there is no way. If all of these voices were male, you know exactly what will happen. Where's the female representation in AIs? And it's like, the three major AI devices are female, and that's a problem too. And now it's going to be non-binary. And it's like, when all of our voices are non-binary, everything will be fine. Like, I'm thinking of, like, monorails and train stations and airports and that. They're usually female voices. Why? Just think that's because, and that's the voice people enjoy more. They prefer that voice. And I'm thinking about, like, a monorail, or not a monorail, like an airport when they say, or when they have some airports will have, like, the pre-recorded voice saying now boarding here, that they'll have those pre-recorded voices. Most the airports I've been to are small enough that those are actual people saying that. But generally, when you hear things over the loudspeaker like that and they're women's voices, it's just, like, does that make me think women are subservient? And does that make me think women are my servants when they're commanding me and declaring this thing is going to happen? When they're declaring that all boarding now or something? I think that they're completely over psychologizing this. And again, when you're complaining about patriarchy, it's like, I'm sorry, I'm going to be very radical here and say I do not think patriarchy exists in the sense that they think it exists. That men are constantly oppressing women. It's like, no, I just don't think it's happening. There is no systemic. There are stereotypes, sure, and I think that's what they fail to realize, that there are stereotypes, but there will always be stereotypes, and there are stereotypes in everything that affects everyone. It's like, you have to deal with it. That's just the way it is. I don't think they're necessarily damaging as long as people are smart enough to realize that, like, yeah, stereotypes are stereotypes. There's a kernel of truth to them, and that's why they exist, but they don't apply to everyone. Don't think in a collectivist manner. But that's pretty much it here. I like the video. If you enjoyed, subscribe for more. If you disagree with me, tell me why in the comment section. If you agree with me, tell me why in the comment section. And thanks for watching.